Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for making time in this chilly weather to drive from far away. I had some people drove from the other side of the world. We appreciate your willingness to come and be part of the conversations today. We're having, this is our second series of workshops with the European Union, as you saw in the poster. In the first series, we focused on skills aspects, but I'm going to highlight more on that when we start the conversation. But as a way of introduction, we have invited our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vatiswa Papuzamklaga, to come and open our dialogue today, but she has other commitments that she needs to go and attend to. So she will give her speech, and after she has given a speech, then we will slowly get into our dialogue for today. So without further ado, I'm not going to be long so that we can give her the time to welcome us here as the principal and wish us well for our discussions today. So thank you very much, Dr. Vati, for making time. I know you are very busy. There are a lot of things that are on your plate, but I think your leadership is a reminder to us that the university is taking this initiative very seriously. And today's dialogue is not just about talking, it's about actions. And as our leader at the university around research, innovation, and engagement, the coming to open the event is a commitment to say, whatever we're going to speak about today and the decisions that we're going to make as a collective, her office is supporting us and will make sure that we are able to execute on the outcomes of the conversations today. So at this juncture, I'm going to hand over to her to come and address us. Over to you, Doc. Yes, they will hand you the mic, the mobile mic.
Thank you so much, Professor Mpofu, our program director for today. Not only just our program director, our researcher holder for 2 researchers, one being funded by the National Research Foundation through the DSI, and one being funded by Gibela. And over and above that, our task team member for the technology hub within the Institute for Future of Work. To the European Union embassies present here today, fellow colleagues in higher education, government departments, student leaders, industry captains, and other esteemed colleagues here represented, fellow South Africans, and the panelists herein mentioned, Mrs. Mapefo Ano Frempong, who is the Chief Executive Officer of TITA, the Transport Education Training Authority, Mrs. Colette Yende, who is our procurement executive at Gibela Rail Transport Consortium, Mr. Kenneth Nenzelele, the SHIQ manager, representing Mr. Owen Maholeni, the CEO of De Berg Engineering, Ms. Samantha Hebert, the head of corporate services at Transnet, representing Portia Debbie, who is a group chief executive at Transnet. The European Union delegation to South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome to the dialogue today. At the end of April 2022, under the banner of the Institute for the Future of Work, the Tshwane University of Technology and the European Union delegation in South Africa held an inaugural hybrid event themed Successful Future Work Skills and Education Partnerships in the Transport Manufacturing Sector. Several challenges, colleagues, and relevant interventions were proposed by the participants from industry, from government and the EU, with an affirmation by the EU on the willingness to collaborate with partners such as the Tshwane University of Technology to address the triple challenge of poverty, inequality, and unemployment in our beloved country. One of the solutions precipitating from the last dialogue was the exploration of the localization. Delegates at the previous workshop concurred on the need to master models of knowledge and innovation capabilities, creation for the localization of new products. Let me tap to an example on the medical devices, rather the medical device manufacturing sector, as well as the jigs and fixture projects for train manufacturing. Those were highlighted as possible prescriptions to the pandemic of unemployment that ravages our young people in South Africa. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to have today's conversations and reflect on the learnings from the localization and supply development in the rail sector. The rail sector has been designated. What does that mean? Designated sectors are those sectors that have been identified to have a certain percentage of local content. Meaning that designated sectors, goods must be manufactured locally, or a certain percentage of these goods must be manufactured locally. Such an instruction was issued by the Finance Minister on the 16th of July 2012. Today is almost 10 years later, and we need to take stock of what has not worked, what has worked, what has also worked, and how can we convert all this learning to advance a social compact with the citizens of this country, in which the Institute for Future of Work champions, through its technology hub, the technical matters, through its dialogue, the conversations to drive private sector, international partners, academia, and government collaborations in the context of the advanced manufacturing activities of the transport sector. Let us hear from the range of panelists today and chart an amicable way forward, not just for South Africans, but for Africa as a continent and the entire global South through the conversations that will be taking place. I must conclude by indicating that the university is resolute in making knowledge work, and it is already walking the talk. Mr. Tsidiso Muhlomi, who is in our midst today, I'm sure you might have seen him in the previous one. Can you wave? Mr. Tsidiso Muhlomi has been appointed by our university as the Senior Director to champion the Institute for Future of Work, and will be making remarks at the closure of today's discussions. And we are truly excited by his presence. Please reach out to him, ladies and gentlemen, and let's ensure these conversations become seed falling on fertile ground. So we take the aspirations of the young people forward, not until we are deliberate, not until we are resolute, we will not be in a position to take the aspirations of our young people forward. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, colleagues, to whom much is given, much is required. Let us all roll our sleeves and take our country and our continent forward. I thank you.
So thank you very much, DVC. As I indicated, that there is serious commitment from our university with respect to the conversations we're having today. And that commitment is demonstrated by the DVC coming through. Initially, she had said that she's going to come through virtually. This is why we didn't have a mic arranged for her. But because of the commitment that she has to this project, you know, I suddenly, when I was chatting with Anton, I asked Anton to call because I couldn't connect because of the network. Then Anton says, no, she's actually at the door, you know. So for me, I want to applaud the leadership for her determined commitment. I must also mention, for those of you who may not know, that if you hear her speak, you would think she has been part of the furniture for a long time at this university. But she is barely halfway through her her first term as a DVC at our university. And we are going places, you know. The colleagues that have interacted with her, I mean, even the entire setting up of this relationship with the European Union is an initiative that came from her office. And so I'm saying to the industry partners that are here today, we've got leadership that is committed to the cause that we have as an institute, and would like you guys to come along and be part of the journey, because there is great things that are coming ahead of us. We are still warming up, and you want to be part of the great things when they do happen. We'll highlight about those as the workshop continues later on. But DVC, thank you so much. We are looking forward to the outcomes of the meeting today, and these will be reported to your office so that we can take the actions that we need to take to make a difference in the lives of the young people, which all these things that we're doing is really about them, you know, because if there are no jobs, it's the young people that are suffering. If the localization is not working, it's the young people that suffer. You know, we can point at them and saying they are breaking this, they are doing that, but at the end of the day, if we're not putting solutions on the table, then we're not helping the country move forward. And she's rightfully said as well, the continent in general and even the global south at large. So the work that we are looking forward to doing here is about impacting, you know, the global south at large as we know it, ultimately. So thank you very much, and you are excused if you do need to depart. So at this juncture, I'll get my laptop so that I can introduce appropriately our panelists this morning. So I want to start by emphasizing as well that at the first dialogue, one of the things that came out, and as the story is available on the TUT website, you can go and confirm that story with, on the TUT website. One of the things that came out was the issue of the localization and supplier development as a critical part of what needs to take place with respect to, you know, transforming the transport sector. And we are very honored today that the TITA CEO has also cleared a diary, because she is the TITA is also very deliberate about its strategy on transport, not just in South Africa, but also into the continent. I heard very interestingly that you know, the CEO was engaging various transport manufacturers in the continent, and so this is why for us it was very important that, you know, her office is able to be here today so that she can participate in the conversations, give us a view from that strategic perspective, what TITA is thinking about, and how their activities are going to build up into what we're doing. I must also mention that the TITA is also committed to a chair within our university. So not only is she coming to participate in the dialogue, she's walking the talk. And I hope that's also a challenge to some of us to also come and say, how do we sit around the table and define initiatives that speak to what the specific industry partner is interested in. So thank you so much, CEO, for coming through. And then we've got Ms. And then your name runs away. I'm saying all these things from my heart, so I'm not reading them from a script. Colette Yende, yes, Colette. So Colette has been working with us for quite some time now. We had a localization situation that we tried to resolve amicably. We tried to speak to Transnet. We tried to also involve we had Transnet and who else? And Eskom was supposed to be involved as well, you know. And there was a supplier who was giving them a lot of problems, and we tried to work around a possible solution, but our efforts didn't really work out the way that we wanted them to work out. But we are not giving up. And this is why we are having this conversation to say, what are the learnings from those instances that we can reflect on and ask the question, what is it that we missed in coming to a solution that speaks to, the mandates of the projects that we have in our midst, and driving that, reduction in unemployment, the dealing with the issues of poverty and the issues of inequality. So Kolotjende is a procurement executive at Gibela, and thank you also for clearing your diary so that you can make time to be here today. We are looking forward to your contributions today. And then the last member who I'm going to introduce comes with several hats. The first hat that he has, as was rightfully mentioned by the TVC, he's the manager for Delbek Engineering. He's responsible for their quality issues. So in a sense, he represents the SMMEs that localization is also about, so that they can also speak for themselves and relate to us what are their issues, what are their challenges in terms of the localization that is taking place, what is working for them, what is not working for them, and he will give us a view with respect to the SMMEs. I know that online we've got colleagues from Transnet. I'm aware that there's somebody who's monitoring the feed that is coming through from online. One of the people that was mentioned by the TVC was Samantha. Samantha is going to be joining us online, and there are several others that the guys who are monitoring the feed online will also update us on. So with that, these are the panelists that we have today, but I'm also aware that there's quite a number of people in the audience who are also in one way or the other involved in this ecosystem. And I want to be so kind as to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves so that as we move along, we also have a picture of who is in the room, given that the room is not so fully packed, at least for those who are here physically, so that all of us have a sense of who is in the room and who we are conversing with. I'll start off from my extreme right over there and come this way. If you can please introduce yourself, which organization you're from.
Okay, a very good morning to everyone. I go by the name of Andile Senemis Ndlovu. I'm actually a TUT student in doing building sciences. So actually I'll be furthering my studies in quantity surveying, advanced diploma in quantity surveying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's the lady there behind you, sir, and then you come this way.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sinegugu Shabalala, and I am the founder of Aerith Technologies, and we are an IoT solution provider to manufacturing companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Trimble. I'm a recently retired professor here in industrial engineering, but I'm still on part-time teaching supply chain management and business dynamics to our master students. And I'm also president of the International Network on Appropriate Technology, which a number of our faculty here are involved with. And we're very interested in collaborating. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Junior Matlakala. I'm one of the master students here. So my research topic focus on developing a framework which will help rail manufacturing SMMEs to grow into global manufacturing networks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Junior. So you see also the topics of our students, they're about the development of the economy. It's not just blue sky. We are asking questions of, where can these SMEs take us as a country? And this is why we've said our students need to come here and participate and listen to what are the issues so that they can address those issues when they prepare their documents. I thought I should just interject there with that commercial. You can continue. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pius Ila, and I work I represent two organizations. The first is the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa, It's a data science and machine learning focused, enterprise. We have operations in Cape Town and also here in Gauteng. And I'm also representing industry officer for the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences, stationed in Muizenberg, operating across 6 centers of excellence in Africa. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bisapo Klenitoy, the Managing Director of Ayeni Rail. We manufacture wheels for trains. We are a subsidiary of an Italian company, Lucchini LRS.
Thank you very much. You're welcome here, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David, and I'm the Economic Counselor of the Embassy of the Czech Republic. The companies that I represent here are mostly on the capital equipment side, production line manufacturers, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tsidi Somotlomi, and I'm the Senior Director for the Institute for Future of Work, and you are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Hi. Morning. I'm Rafaela Lamonica, representing Remco Manufacturing. We are a local manufacturer, fabricator of product used in the rail industry, also a number of other industries, but I think we've been able to assist with the localization of a lot of complex assemblies which previously weren't done here. So, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, morning everyone. I'm Matthew Stern from the EU South Africa Partners for Growth program. I'm partners with TUT in the organization of this workshop series.
Morning, my name is Lesweu Rampa. I represent Intervent Universal. We are in the fabrication of various metal and sheeting components, either in rail or any other mechanical engineering applications.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nolufefe Solani, and I represent Alstom Ubunye, which is a rail manufacturing company in South Africa.
Good morning, everyone. The name is Pete Mahlangu. I'm with Gibela on the procurement side, supply development. Yes, I've been involved in some of the localization with a number of suppliers in South Africa. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Charles Camel. I'm from Max Steel, but I wear a few hats here. I'm quite involved with DTIC on localization projects on the renewable energy products, and I work closely with Gabela on localization, and I have some steel mill production experience as well.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wiseman Ladla from Alstom Ubunye. I'm the Site Human Resources Director for that company. I work closely with Nolofefe on topics of transformation. Thank you.
So colleagues, I want to thank you very much, even before we get into the conversations of today, for making time out of your busy schedules to be here. For me, it also cements the fact that we all agree that this is an important conversation that we need to have. And it can't just be a talk show. There needs to be action out of what we're going to converse about today. So in the closing remarks that Mr. Muhlomi is going to be giving us as our senior director here, he will also express that commitment of saying, this is definitely the things that we're looking forward to doing based on what will have come out of the conversations. So all of us are very welcome to participate. It's not strictly for the panelists. The panelists are here because we've asked them to come and sit in the front. But actually, we could have just had a circle, where we could just have a conversation, and find each other. What are the issues? What are the non-issues? What do we need to deal with? So I'm looking forward to engaging you guys. So moving right along to the next phase. So in this phase, having done the introductions, I'll just take the step back again, especially for those who were not at the previous workshop. Some of you were at the previous workshop, so you may know about these questions already, but some may not have been here. So for the sake of those who are not here, and for them to have a context on where we are, where this high-speed train is picking up speed from, I'm just going to share with you the questions that we spoke about at the previous workshop. So the first question that we addressed at the first workshop was, to what extent to what extent and how quickly are tertiary institutions able to respond to the changing skills needs of businesses, including the certification of new qualifications. So that was one of the questions that we spoke about. And then we also spoke about what are the challenges around what are the challenges around technology, infrastructure, the contracting of the manufacturing in terms of its contribution to the GDP that are contributing to ineffectiveness in the sector, and how does this relate to skills? So the focus was really on saying, looking at skills, what are the issues that we are facing to get to an advanced manufacturing transport sector that is globally competitive? So that was the primary focus, and some of the key issues that came out was issues of technological literacy, being the one that is preventing, even among those that have already that have access to advanced technology. People are not technologically literate, And I think one example that was cited was people using iPhones only as devices to call, But they've got an iPhone, but the only thing they do with it is they only call, So somewhere there's a gap in terms of the literacy with respect to that technology. Infrastructure scarcity, especially in rural communities. With the COVID-19, a lot of our students had to go back home. And then, everyone realized that it was a very bad idea to say that they must leave and go back to the village, because in the village there's no connectivity, so they can connect to class, So that was also highlighted. Late involvement in technological development. Instances of countries where children start getting involved in robotics at a very tender age were highlighted, which is not necessarily the case here. Here you need to wait until, for you to hear the word robot, you must be in the last year of your first year degree. Whereas, in the other countries, the moment you're 6 years old, even prior to you getting into school, preschool years, you're already being exposed to technology. So by the time you are at university, your understanding and your appreciation is at another level. And then the other issue that came out was the lack of application of knowledge and practical content. A lot of people say that half the graduates that come out of our universities, our TVET colleges, when they get to industry, they need to be trained as if they've never been trained before. And that was highlighted as a big challenge. And then the state of procurement focuses on the final product or service. In as much as we're speaking about skills, procurement issues also came up, that the focus is just about the final product, not necessarily the entire, and it's good that you mentioned that you're involved with the DTIC in terms of products for renewable energy and all that, because it's the entire value chain that people need to have visibility on, not just the final product at the end of the line. So some possible interventions that were highlighted were bringing together various public and private partners to solve national transport challenges. So part of this dialogue is part of that process. The Institute for the Future of Work is going to be a hub that focuses on bringing public and private partners to come and work together around solving the challenges, creating linkages between knowledge creation and commercialization. Some people, when I spoke to them, said to me, why is the university now talking about localization and supplier development? Are you not supposed to be talking about how the qualification must be structured? Is that really, what space is the university operating in now? But as you rightfully heard, our DVC's title is Research, Innovation, and Commercialization. As universities, the model where we just wait for subsidy from the Department of Higher Education and Training is not a sustainable one. And with the fees that fell, and all of us are aware that the fees fell sometime, and everyone was worried, what kind of education are we going to be delivering? It means that in the way that we support higher education and fund it, we need to think differently. And this is why here we've got a research chair, but it's closely associated with an incubator. And later on, we'll give you the opportunity to walk around and see the setup that we're trying to that we've been having for the past 5 years. And in the next coming 5 years with the new director, we're looking forward to expanding that capability so that we're able not just to teach students, but also make sure that the knowledge they are getting is practical and is relevant to the industry that needs to be serviced, or they become entrepreneurs themselves. So those were some of the points that came up during the last conversation. And at this juncture, I'm going to now come to my panelists, and then I'm going to now share with them the questions that I have for them that are focused on today's conversation. So what we're going to do, there are two major questions that we're going to speak to. So I'll give each of them an opportunity to speak to the first question. After they've each had an opportunity to speak to the first question, I'll then open it up to the floor. So you really need to have your, notepads ready so that you can be noting things that you think are important or bringing things to the fore that you think maybe we are missing them in the conversation. So the first question is, and I'm going to start off with you, Mr. Nanzelele, because you are the SMME who localization is about supporting and helping and assisting. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth before you are influenced by what others say. Okay. And then I'll come to the other role players. Is that okay, Mr. Nanzelele?
Yes.
Super. What are the practices, approaches that work in effectively and efficiently localizing component production in the rail sector, and what has not worked in this regard, especially for you guys? Maybe you can also just give a context in what space you're operating in. And I heard there are a lot of other component suppliers within the room. So also you can also, make your own notes on what are those aspects there that have, the practices that have worked, the approaches that are working effectively, but also at the same time, what is it that hasn't worked for you guys as SMMEs in this supply development sector of the rail?
Okay, thank you very much. And good morning to everyone presented here today. My name is Kenneth Nanjarere. As already said, I'm a quality manager or a check manager for Delberg Engineering. Delberg Engineering is a medium organization which is a first tier supplier to the rail industry. I see we have got some of our customers here presented today. I will not point out who. Yeah. We have been involved in the localization and supply development practices with our customers. And what have worked for us in that regard is the close relationship that we have. If I can say right now, in terms of the materials that we use for manufacturing our components, we are almost 100% localized. Most of our manufacturing materials are coming locally. We work also closely with our suppliers to try and develop them, although it's not at that level that our customers develop us. The challenge that we face with that regards in terms of trying to develop our own suppliers is the resource. As a medium organization, we don't have much resource to support our suppliers. That being in terms of the human resource, you will see that in bigger organizations or the OEMs that we supply the components to, they will have a fully functional supplier development department, which to us, we don't have that luxury to, but we hope as we grow, that branch of department will open up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I thought maybe you'd also speak about technology, given your background in my automation classes. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think from the last conversation that we had, one of the things that we spoke about was the question of technologically, you know. I mean, one thing that we've been arguing is that when we speak about localization, it's always nice to speak about localization in terms of the jobs that are created from making a component, you know, getting some sheet metal from somewhere, changing its shape to fit a specific place in the train. But what happens to those flows that are around the technology that produces the component? Because there are also jobs there. I mean, we're crying about jobs, but aren't we the same people who are also burning these jobs in the process by not making sure that when we say this component, we also make sure that these machines that are associated with that component, you know, we are also leveraging. So I just wanted to get a sense, technologically, are you utilizing locally developed technology to your production, or you still then also need to, you know, talk to the other brothers and sisters from across the seas to, and how is that working? Is it working for you? Is it not working? Yeah, super.
Thank you. Also, in terms of technology, we are using local technology to do our manufacturing, although we find that some of the machineries, we import them from overseas. But when they get here, we get support locally in terms of maintenance and other support in running those equipments.
Thank you. Do you have a sense of percentages? Not to put you on the spot, but just to get a sense of how that picture is looking, because you said you import some of the machines, some of them come locally. Is it a 50-50 type of a setup, or it's a 70-30?
I would say it's 60 overseas, 40 locally.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. Obviously, it's thumbs up a bit, but you have a sense. It gives us a sense. So thank you very much. So Colette, from your end, what are the practices, approaches that have worked effectively and efficiently for you as an original equipment manufacturer in terms of localizing component production in the rail sector? And what is it that has not worked? Yeah. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Prof. I think from a localization standpoint, in terms of practices, I think basically, if you're working with as an OEM, when we work with SMME to suppliers, number one, what we've tried to apply an intense program of supplier development, which means the people that you're working with and you're developing in terms of localization, they have to understand the bill of material that you are dealing with. But it has to be a conversation between the two parties, because we can define a specification which is as per what we want in terms of fit for purpose. And you may find that the people that you are working with and you are developing have different ideas. So number one, it's collaboration that normally works. And number two, in terms of defining the processes, we have an intense process, an intense program at Gibela. As you know, we work with Alstom, our technology partner, when we're developing. So with that, what we tend to do then, the process is not only about the material or the end product, as you were saying earlier. It also talks to the automation and the flow of material within the plant. So we look at various aspects of it, because eventually the end goal is not to develop somebody for yourself. The end goal is to develop somebody who's able to compete beyond the order that you are actually giving them. What sometimes tend not to work is the reality of some of the partners that we embark on in terms of developing them. I wish when we do these processes, even especially our SMMEs, should be able to say, this is what I need in terms of development, and this is what I need in a long term. What I find, not only at Gibela, even throughout the years, is that we tend to come in as suppliers just so that we can start the development, but the reality of the inflation, the reality of finding businesses elsewhere and growing sometimes tend to choke the development of an individual supplier beyond yourself. So what I also would want to add in this, in fact, I said this, I think, last year in one of the talks that we had within the supply chain industry, is that what would work for this country in terms of localization is not to do it in isolation as one institution. It is to understand, as the rail sector, what is it that we need so that we are able to create 2 or 3 suppliers within the value chain that can participate and collaborate and cooperate with each other. There's a word that we use, it says co-opetition. So they may compete with each other, but the competition, it's a healthy competition, as we actually see in the automotive industry. What we also need to be looking at in terms of localization, and what sometimes constrains us, is that you would find that some of the things that we need are available in the automotive sector, but the issue of volumes does constrain the amount of localization, which means, as Charles was saying, that the integration of the OEMs with the DTIC, with the DSTs, with the institutions such as yourselves, is actually needed. These conversations are needed. I think earlier you mentioned that somebody said, why are you not defining, or the university defining, a framework of the how that can be adopted and modified? It would never be a one-size-fits-all. Localization or supply development can never be a one-size-fits-all. Yes, the end goal is job creation. The end goal is increase local content and local participation as well, to the point of enforcing some of the big machineries to be manufactured locally. I think what is a challenge in terms of what doesn't work, sometimes the speed at which we get that done versus the customer demand from myself does become an issue.
So when you're saying speed of getting things done, you're speaking about speed of you getting your product, or speed of the entire
development
system?
is not easy, and sometimes it takes longer. And yet, I, as an OEM, have got a certain demand. So when we start, sometimes we do start late and expect our partners to move at the speed that we need them to move at. And therefore, which means the skills gap in the country also needs to be enhanced in order to align with some of the demands that we have for localization, for production, for technology, so that we can move together at the same speed. But we are not there. There's that lack of alignment, because then it requires me, as a person who needs to do certain things, to spend much more time. And also, there is something that we used to do previously. When you are, I think you mentioned that when you buy equipment, part of the obligation of the party you are buying from is to train you on the maintenance of those machineries. That is done so that we can start sourcing some of the local spares here instead of importing those spares. But it is important, as a supply chain or a procurement person, that that is incorporated in terms of the contract when I import a machinery. Certain obligations have to be enforced with our international partners.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I guess the ball is in your court squarely now.
I'm actually looking at everyone talking about manufacturing and talking about localization. And I'm thinking our interaction really is with the skills development part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, skills development really is such a great pillar for those that are in employment, I mean the technicians, the artisans themselves, but also for those that really want to get into entrepreneurship. Not only do they need the skills, but they also need networks. Now, I could decide I want to get involved in sheet manufacturing and advanced manufacturing and buy the machinery. But if I don't get the partners and if I don't get the demand, it will be a white elephant. Now, the way in which our government has come up with a term called the post-school education and training system is to try and remove the blockages between institutions of learning, the industry itself, as well as the institutions that can fund those that want to get involved in skills development, be it as workers or be it as entrepreneurs. Now, if one can look at the crisis that came, just to show in some instances collaboration can work, precipitated by a crisis. If we look at what happened, even though it would be in the fashion industry or in the clothing industry, when COVID came, the country had an option to get masks made from China or to get local manufacturers in the clothing industry to actually make a thing as simple as a mask, but required in masses because that's what we needed at the time. So there was a process that was undertaken by government, and that process was to say, while we are in the middle of a crisis and while we are in lockdown levels and we have got these regulations that require people to put on masks and sanitize, why don't we localize that? Why don't we give opportunities to those that can do this without it being dependent on things that are coming from outside? And out of that program, therefore, different SETAs that were dealing with chemicals, SETAs that were dealing with the clothing industry, SETAs that were dealing with different services were put together into a platform and asked to see how we can advocate for informal traders, small micro enterprises to get into the space of manufacturing that which was in demand. So manufacturing without demand doesn't always work. And in this particular case, the demand was matched with the potential SMMEs by institutions like SETAs that are connected with different businesses. So the intention was to say, let's start with local clothing manufacturers to get masks produced in large bulks. And let's find the buyers and connect them to those that require the masks. While I might be talking about something that looks small, but when you really connect the supplier with the demand, it makes localization possible. It not only focused on masks, but it actually flowed over to sanitizers because there were people that were in the industry of chemicals. So suddenly those that were in alcohol were saying, let's use the alcohol content, but we needed that collaboration that they've spoken about. When you bring role players together, even during a crisis, and the focus is to see how we can map our resources together, it works. For us as transport, obviously assisting the transport sector with different skills and facilitating skills, unless there is manufacturing, there are no goods to be distributed. But we found that an industry flew out of that collaborated exercise where there was a demand for online trading, and we then had to direct our focus in skilling those that could be involved in delivery of goods, either small trucks, either cyclists, or whatever the case might be. Now, this to me indicates that if we are able to integrate and collaborate, even at the level of Gibela and your counterparts, and even in the rail industry, suddenly we can get something great going. Now, if I look at what has worked from a skills development part, to me, it looks like to a large extent we need to look at what works outside and bring it locally. So now in Tita's example, just to share the lessons that we learned by taking the skill sets that exist in the country, get them exposed to what is available outside, and bring them back into the country in order for them to, we did it as a pilot. So in 2019, we took 50 TVET graduates that had done mechanical engineering at TVET colleges, and we exposed them to TVET colleges in China. They were based in one province, in Henan province, and they were exposed to how the Chinese do skills development for their young TVET students. They came back to South Africa after 12 months, and we took it upon ourselves to connect them to the role players. I must say, out of that pilot program, we have seen a demand from the industry, especially in this case, the motor industry. They require, obviously, artisans that are skilled, that know what to do. And what we found was if you train a technician on things that don't exist in the market or things that are not demanded, you're actually training them not to be relevant. So we found that TVET students in South Africa, compared to TVET students in Brazil, TVET students in China and Russia, and even in India, they are not exposed, if they are doing mechanical engineering, to real cars in the market. In fact, the failures that are there when they are going through the training, they use an old engine, for an example, that is not even in use. So by the time they get out of the TVET college, they are irrelevant. So our plan was to say, let's bring them out and see what is done out so that we bring them back into the country. And when we arrived in China, we found that all the motor manufacturers that are in South Africa, be it all of the vehicles, let me put it this way, that we see on our roads, when you get to a TVET college in China, they are actually training the young TVET students on those vehicles and on the engines that are out there. So by the time they say, I'm a mechanic, they already are a real mechanic because they've been exposed to the real thing. So how did this help us? It actually helped us to realize the problem is not the skills in the country. The problem is how they are exposed to skills development. And if Toyota in China can expose TVET students to a real Toyota car, why can't they do it in SA? It requires dialogues. It requires partnerships. It requires discussions. So to cut a long story short, those 50 TVET students are now currently working in BMW. They are working in Toyota, and some are running their tire fitment center. Just by being exposed from a classroom to a real world out there, coming back into the country and being exposed to a real company in the country. So I would believe if we were to bring localization in the rail sector and provide the skill sets that are there, we would need to work with what we have, expose them to what is necessary, bring partnerships and stop competing, and bring about a different pipeline and articulation and skills development than we currently are accustomed to. The demand now for TITA is bring us more TVET students in order for them to come and work in the different car companies, just in one sector. But over and beyond that, because of our contribution in that program of stimulating the economy during COVID, we have been able in the past 2 years to develop about 3,500 sort of entrepreneurs that are involved in logistics and supply chain. Suddenly somebody was unemployed, they now have been trained, they are now delivering, they are in the logistics space. You might be asking yourself, why is she talking about transport and logistics? You can apply the lessons learned there into hardcore manufacturing. You can partner in the BRICS level, bring it back into the country, and really change skills development and education and training in the PSAP space.
Thank you. As you were speaking about China, I don't know how many of you saw the article that there's a high speed that the Chinese will be setting up between Joburg and Durban.
Yes.
Or did I? So for me, in the context of what we're speaking about today, obviously these are still very early discussion stages. Yeah. But for me, that's where we miss it, like what you're saying, Colette, that the timing, the timing of these things, we lose it there. Because right now, when that story comes out, I'm not sure who's looking out for that story, who's going to say, you know what, I'm here, I'm from Tita. We need to be involved, we need to participate, so that while these discussions are happening, some of the background work that needs to happen, like taking students to China before even the project begins. So by the time the project begins, we know we've got, on top of the pilot that you've run, like the one that you've done now, we've got those skills that are already going to be coming and participating and being involved either as workers or, like you're rightfully mentioning as well, as entrepreneurs. So I don't know whether those conversations are happening. Are we putting in that effort to make sure that when the things start appearing, we also try and find ways of making sure that we are also involved in the process right at the beginning stages. Because when you lose it there, you're always playing the catch-up game. And you expect the SMME Colette to come to the party very quickly. But you're not giving them that time to get ready to come to the party.
What you're saying, Prof, is reminding me that at some point we, or the government, in fact, had set up different clusters. They did. And these clusters were able to collaborate, and it's what gave birth to the designations today, right? I think the question is that I often ask myself is that now we had the clusters, we have the designated components, but we have exemptions. Where did we lose it? Because the purposes of the cluster, they were protecting the industry. They were protecting South Africa against capital leakage. They were protecting all these jobs. But it is the very same clusters that are now asking for exemptions to supply to us. Where did we lose it?
So maybe this is the part where I open it up now a bit. If there are people who would like to contribute to this part of the conversation, you can show by raising your hands. There's a roaming mic that can be shared around. I see I've recognized your hand. Is there another hand? Is that a hand? Okay, there's two hands. There's two hands, so if we can give the gentleman the mic over there.
Thanks very much, Prof, for the opportunity. I think mine is a little bit more of a question, centered around the work that you do. What is the role and the importance? How do you articulate the role and importance of digital innovation? Be it, I know there's a lot of buzz going around for IR and all that, but in terms of at the granular level, at the basics level, and where it relates to skilling up, relevant skilling up, job creation, be it in a production environment or be it somewhere else, how important is that to you? And my question to you, ma'am, is, what is the priority of this kind of, skill when it comes to young people in South Africa? Yeah.
I think we'll take the questions.
Okay.
We'll respond after the question.
We have all of them on the floor. Okay, thank you. But yours is a comment, right?
It's really just a question that Colette touched on. The question of volumes. Am I loud enough for everybody or not?
For the ones online.
Okay, so the question that you raised on volumes is probably one of the biggest challenges we face. And if you look at what's happening with the technologies that are being transferred, they're designed around high volume production and technologies. What we have is we see a local content requirement, which we can't translate because of the barriers we have, because it takes a huge volume to make the investment in the technologies needed. And if we don't make that investment, then everything else is moot, because you don't see any development in suppliers, you don't have any skills requirements. And effectively, how do we address that bridge so that when the international partner, for want of a better word, starts talking about putting the project in locally, they've taken a look at the barriers to putting the project in place in terms of products required, potentially the steels required, the electronics required, and how do we look at the localization of those before we put a project in place with the pipe dream that can't be achieved. That's really the challenge for me, if you get my drift.
So the conceptualization is not...
At conceptualization, you don't take into consideration the barriers to putting the project in place locally, whether it's skills, whether it's the technology, or whether it's the volumes, which are the three barriers potentially to those projects. That's what we need to start addressing before we go ahead and make these fancy projects. And I'm talking here, for example, like renewable energy. These wind towers, they effectively have to be imported because there's no steel domestically manufactured. They're probably going to be imported semi-produced because you also haven't got a press brake big enough. That's crazy. We need to go and have a look at a redesign, and we need to be taking forceful measures against, to make sure we talk localization and do localization rather than talking it. That was my comment, really, more than anything else.
Yes, Roberto?
Thank you. It's extremely interesting what you're saying and your experience that you're sharing with us. And actually, I wish there was much more discussions at this nitty-gritty level of detail of things. My question to you is that I heard a lot the need for collaboration, cooperation, pragmatism, basically, looking at what is a reality and then how you achieve certain things. I know this might sound a $1 billion question, but for us it's very interesting. I'm from the EU, and actually we share a concern which is common to both of us, which is economic growth in this country and unemployment. It's how you achieve it that is this important thing. So the question for me is, what do you think is the role of the state as an enabler when it comes to localization, and what is the role that private operators and business should play? They should go together at some point. But for instance, the comment you made about exemptions, that exemptions sometimes are becoming more the rule rather than the exception, is indicative, actually, that there is a problem at the bottom level that hasn't been addressed. So where do you see exactly the role of the state in putting in place policies that are encouraging it, but maybe without interfering with what are business decisions that have to be taken at the bottom, at the ground level? And I think this is very important because at this stage, sometimes, but again, opinions can differ, but sometimes there is a vision that the state is taking an over a role which is not his in defining in such a level of detail in due consultation with the private operators, or maybe that's not the case, I don't know. I would just like to get your opinion and freshly and bluntly also on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto, for the energetic question. I guess this is why we are having these conversations, to find each other, to ask those questions, but also to hear what we are thinking, But it would also be nice to also hear from your end what your thoughts are, so that we build this train together. Who's going to go first?
I will start, and perhaps I'd like to start with Roberto's question.
You want to start with Roberto?
And come this side.
And come this side.
Yeah. In my humble view, the state should attempt to support in terms of, while they're doing policies, right? But their role is to enable businesses to... The point I've written here is that there is an issue with the cost of doing business. And there is a certain level of support that is required. If you look at today, when I arrived here, we were being load shed. I look at SMMEs that are still developing. If they don't have generators, what happens to them? And we need them similar to we need large entities. But while I'm supporting them and they're growing and they don't have all of these things that enable them to compete with the others, I will drop him. I'm going to go to the one because I've got a demand on the other side. So the state should have enabling mechanism for small businesses and supporting them. right? And I think when we look at, for me, the role of the private sector, we make demands to the market and to our suppliers. And at times we do need to look at what is it that would work for both of us. We are very strict with our specifications, which then leads us to go and get these exemptions, which have become the rule, not an exception. And I fully agree with that point, because South Africa has one of the best policies. I like them and I love them. And I subscribe to most of them, right? But we have to be realistic in terms of how then do we support them. They cannot be policies that are there looking good and not supported. And yes, as private sector, we do say, allow us some breathing space, government, so that we can then influence them for them to work. Because if a policy is choking a private entity, eventually I'm going to convince the policymaker that it doesn't work. It's better for me to import. It's quicker for me to import. And then I'm creating a barrier here with one of the projects, which I won't mention, that Prof spoke about. That project, in terms of, because if one company closes, it's a value chain that suffers. It's their sub-suppliers and the value chain gets impacted. And at the same time, if you look at how it started sometimes with the private sector increasing its prices as well. We don't think about what we charge other people. So the higher the cost of doing business, the difficult it is at times to grow the economy. So there are certain balances that we have to make and certain sacrifices that we have to make. And maybe in linking that to your question in terms of digital innovation, at some point we have to introduce that to enable the reduction of the cost of doing business. We, however, need to do it in such a way that it doesn't affect job creation. At some point, I went to Japan when I worked for one of the SOCs, and I was interested in understanding how they apply a technology and what's the impact of the evolution of jobs, because it's highly technological and highly digitized. But if you sit with them and analyze the impact of their innovation and continuous improvement practices that they do, really they don't have an issue with job creation, because it enables a different aspect of the business to be enhanced. But sometimes we tend to think in this way, that because I am there's somebody that is managing a CNC to do pressing, next time I don't need that person. I just need a quality person, the machine gets set up, a quality person just does the checking. But there's other things that we need to be thinking of. I think we sometimes don't want to be creative enough to be inclusive. I'll leave it at that. I think I'll take more questions later.
You want to go, Nzele?
Yeah, just on the digitalization. With us, it's two ways. There's operation that we do, which is welding. It's very manual. So if we try to digitalize there, we are going to have some job losses, because we'll be bringing in the robots. And then the other challenge we have in bringing that into that area is the variety of products that are produced in there. Digitalization is more suitable in a sort of product layout. So for us in that area, it's difficult. But there are other areas where we have introduced CNCs, that is bending area, where we are able to transfer data into the machine, and then we just have one operator there who just feed in the pipes, and then the bending continues. So those are the two areas that we have the digitalization on.
There was a question with regards to the priorities in the skills development area for digitization. It is such a critical part. You can't ignore that other parts of the world are much more advanced because of digitization. Now, the mainstream schooling, to a large extent, is taking it slower to bring upon digitization. But when it gets to the higher level and the higher end, being the TVETs, the universities, at different levels, some are exploring digitization. From our sector in skills development, it depends on how ready the sector is with regards to digitization. We've done research. Research indicates that we can't wait anymore. To a large extent, we were thrown into some bit of digitization during COVID, but we definitely need to make much more advances. So it is a priority and it can't be ignored. In our sector, we've made it a priority and we're waiting for partners that can work with us to see how best we can work on a pilot basis and obviously scale it up as and when it is required. When it comes to the delivery of learning, the way in which we do check if indeed learning has taken place, if there's impact, and even with certification, some processes are almost automated in that regard, but that is just a small component, delivery of learning. So it is such a critical part, it can't be ignored, but in our case, we work with partners, so we depend on partners. You asked a critical question about the role of the state, and I think, to me, it's a tough balancing act for a developing country like South Africa, where the state would set up policies that are supposed to enable investment in different businesses. But at the same time, when those policies contradict one another, because the one part of the state is putting in place regulatory measures which undermines the left part of the state, which seeks to drive investment, is a tough balancing act. I actually do look at it and I feel it is just a terrible thing, but at the same time, it can't be ignored. The tough balancing act and tough decisions should be made. I think you've made a valuable input about how quick things are done, and sometimes being brave and just proceeding where we see there are exemptions to be made because policies are contradicting one another. I mean, there is a policy that in some instances in our country, people tend to take some policies to court, and you find that we're saying, okay, we're going to localize, we're going to do support triple BEE, and before you know it, well, it wasn't written properly. It is so there's this contestation of turfs in the country that unfortunately for a developing country that doesn't really help in some instances to advance the economy of this country. The president can call all the investment conferences he wants, but if business together with the state don't see this as our country, all of us, which if it goes down the drain, it affects all of us, it won't help us. So some tough decisions and tough balancing acts are necessary. If we're going to make exemptions as part of government, what exemptions need to be made quickly, and how quick can we get past the bureaucracy that goes with the state? Coming to business, I would say the same. Business has a role to play, obviously, and they're not there for anything else except profit. It must make business sense. It is not about trying to be, it doesn't operate on goodwill all the time. It's about, does it make business sense for me to take this decision? Whereas government is about, let's make sure every citizen is taken care of. It tends to contradict when business and government have to make decisions that make sense for each of their constituencies. I believe business can still engage government as robustly as it does through the constituencies and the formations that are made. But I would wish to see more solutions-oriented type of engagements. Let it not be we engage in government because we want to bash without saying, okay, explore this. We believe this works. Sitting and just bashing them because we've got a loud voice is not helping anyone in the process. It's the citizenry that suffers. That's my honest view as somebody that has been in government for a long time. When I engage with business, you can tell me I'm wrong, but bring solutions.
Thank you very much. I'm continuously picking up that I think at the end of the day, the minds need to meet. You know, that's the sense that I'm getting. Whether it's about what must government do, what must the states do, is it digitization issues? At the end of the day, it's the minds must meet. You know, and with the work that the institute is going to be doing. It's about the meeting of the minds, you know, so that we find each other on these issues. We create that platform which is neutral, where people can come and engage freely. We find each other. We go back to the guys who make up policies. We go back to business and say to business, look, business, this is what came out from the conversations that we had. How can you come to the party to make the things work? Because at the end of the day, the interests will always contradict. There will always be some contradictoriness in the interests that are before us. I wanted to give us a quick break before we address the last question. Is that okay? Yeah. So if we can do a 15-minute break, if we can be back at past for the last hour, and then we're going to go for the closing remarks. But enjoy the break for the next 15 minutes, and then we will be back at past. We are all happy to start off with the next round of questions. I see Colette is not yet here, but I'll repeat the question when she does come back in. I'm going to start off this time around with our TITA CEO. And this question, you may have addressed it indirectly earlier on, but I'll still ask it nevertheless. Most likely we can pick up some other gems that, you know, didn't come in the first phase. Are there areas of improvement that have been identified, obviously from the TITA perspective? What are these areas? How can the other advanced manufacturing sectors derive lessons for practices from these practices in the rail sector? So I know that TITA is responsible for all modes of transport. And I'm also aware that TITA is also looking at what is happening in the continent. You've already brought in lessons that are not necessarily from rail to sort of nudge us to pick up lessons from there. But are there any other lessons that you think are really critical, especially when you look at issues around localization, looking at issues around supplier development? And also maybe you can also highlight, because with the Agile Chair that we're going to be having, there's also some supplier aspects that are going to be coming through there. And there's also some research aspects that we're going to be doing. And there's other issues on research on agility within the transport sector. So in that context, are there any other areas of improvement that you think we need to emphasize on?
I think for me, in all the subsectors of the transport industry, an area that has been lacking and to a large extent impedes the implementation of policy for localization is how to connect different role players to where the need and the demand is. We usually have seminars that we organize, and we would call it a supplier development seminar, with the intention that prospective suppliers would meet with big companies and to a large extent find where they can connect and collaborate and find synergies. Unfortunately, I have found that it's a difficult task to achieve, to try and bring people to connect based on the demand and the supply side. Now, most of these seminars we would call, it would end up being the few that know how to get involved in skills development, talking to themselves. So you want to bring different thoughts, you want to bring dialogues, but the people that are in the room, they are all the converted, they know the issues, but the ones that really need to be exposed are not getting an opportunity to be exposed. Nothing is heartbreaking to see people intending to set up businesses. We usually say, go and open up a company if you are retrenched. It's not the easiest thing to do. When you do open it, so what is the next thing that you do? When you have a product, how do you get the people that demand your product? So we thought by bringing people together, it would bring that opportunity for them to network. And I have found that it is an area that really can be improved. Do I know how? I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea how to get access, how to get an informal trader who wants to grow their business, who has an idea, and who knows that there's a demand somewhere, how to get them to connect is a very difficult thing to achieve for us. So for the transport sector, be it for the rail sector, be it for the aviation sector, be it for the maritime industry and the subsector, or be it the one that deals with the transport and logistics, the bus industry and the taxi industry, to try and see how you can connect potential and prospective enterprises to where the demand is still a big question that I guess not only affects the transport sector, but affects much more than the transport sector. But I believe an opportunity exists in the form of the future of work concept that comes from TUT, which we believe to a large extent it will provide an opportunity for these networks to be created, business to meet up with prospective suppliers, suppliers to meet with prospective manufacturers, so that in the end, the opportunities to not meet once in a meeting can exist for exploration. So TITA is looking forward to being a critical component of the future of work concept. And as well, we have now seen that research and innovation is that which drives development. And that is why we have decided to have a research chair for agile transportation, with an intention to see how best the transport sector, through the research chair, can really be much more advanced and move with the times than it is compared to the rest of the world. I must add that in our institution, taken a brave decision to start looking into South Africa being a gateway to Africa, to the continent, and that is why we have started engaging with the Mozambican government, the Tanzanian government, and to a large extent, we are engaging with Angola as another important part for us to engage with. And other parts of the continent, we intend to find where there's common fit, to see how best the transport sector in South Africa and in the rest of the African continent could be advanced than it is ordinarily now.
On that point, before I go to Colette, what I'm picking up is that there's a lot of talk around the African Free Trade Continental Agreement.
Yeah.
And when we come up with these initiatives on localization and supplier development, I mean, for example, now with Delbeck Engineering, and the work that they are doing, obviously, from what you said earlier on, they don't have capacity to be thinking about those other problems. And maybe it also links to what Roberto was asking, what is the role of the state in making sure that, you know, the ecosystem works. So with what you're saying about, you know, South Africa becoming a gateway, with this localization and the supplier development that we are speaking about, how do we structure that to fit into the context of the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, where I think Colette also mentioned that the idea is not to develop these suppliers strictly for Gibela. The idea is to develop these suppliers so that they can compete anywhere else. How, in your view, with the work that you are doing as TITA, can maybe programs that Tsidiso maybe will speak to in the closing remarks later on, what are the opportunities there, you know, to improve what is taking place in that space? Because a lot of people have said, no, well, the Free Trade Continental Agreement has been finalized, has been signed, but actually there are no instruments to make it functional, you know. But with these conversations, is there no opportunity there? And I agree with you, and I think even from the speech of the TVC earlier on, she spoke about, you know, our work not just impacting South Africa, but impacting the continent and impacting the global South. I mean, are these just speeches that end with no action? Or there's an opportunity for us to say, how do we sit around the table, develop strategies where we deliberately say, okay, Delberg, you're doing well, you're supplying 1 or 2 people here, but maybe we can connect you with Tanzania, connect you with people in Mozambique, and you can start doing work from there. And our localization and supply development efforts don't just then, you know, end in the complexities that I spoke about with my colleague during tea, that sometimes when these exemptions are kick in, you know, it destroys the entire model. And then you are left at a place where you're like, so what were we doing here? But through this African Free Trade Continental Agreement, maybe there's an opportunity. I don't know what is your thought there in that direction.
In fact, the opportunity really exists, and it's about time, and that is what we believe, that we don't leave it out for the state to sign these agreements country to country as part of the AU agreement. There's a vision for AU 2063. There's a vision that SADC has. There's a vision that different parts of the African continent have. But if those are just left to the state as the head and the president signing, and it just is spoken about in a speech, and business doesn't say, okay, how do we then find connections, and how do we now make that possible in order for Africa really to collaborate and even trade regionally and continentally. So when we saw the Africa Free Trade Agreement being signed, we then thought, okay, let's go out there and see what is the best thing to start with. The first thing that was an opportunity that was picked up was in the drone environment. The South African Civil Aviation Authority set up the standards for how drones should be allowed to be, so the regulations were set. Amazingly, the regulations were set in South Africa, but Rwanda, Ghana, and other parts of the continent flew with.
They used the African Free Trade Continental
Yeah,
Agreement.
and they were moving with the regulations that were set up in South Africa.
Implementing them.
And implementing them, simply because the ways in which their rules are set up in terms of how easy it is to do things in their countries and the decision making is different. And maybe the collaboration between government and business in their countries is far much more better than here. So when we saw that, there was a drone council that was set up. We were invited to the drone council to share with them the opportunities for skills development. And I'm happy to report that there is some opportunities of collaboration between South African-based drone operators and drone companies that are working outside the borders of the country. When we saw that, We then saw, oh, it's not only about drones, it actually is about many other things that exist not only in South Africa but in the rest of the continent, which is why we have struck agreements with these three governments that I've cited, and we are intending to approach other governments where we see synergies and potential for collaboration. So, but I believe the future of work for me is one model that can be explored. This is not just the university. It's the university, it's the institutions of learning, it's business, and it's even the research institutions, it's other blocks like the EU and so forth. Finding ways in which we can incubate ideas and really talk about collaboration, explore opportunities. I look at a young person who wants to do something in rail and has ideas, finding space here at the Future of Work Foundation, the Future of Work Institute, and finding access to internet, finding access to mentors, finding access to opportunities, and being really given a safety net than they would ordinarily do if they were based in a province in Limpopo with no access to internet and so forth. So it might look simple to somebody that has access to those, but for a young person with potential and opportunities, they just need to find a safety net and a hub. And I believe this is just one model. If it works, it can be scaled.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll leave Date Mahlomi to speak to that in his closing remarks. Colette, the question that we are answering in this round is, where do you see areas, what are the areas of improvement that you have identified within the work that you do, and how can this be replicated to the other, advanced manufacturing sectors in the transport industry? So from a rail perspective, where you've seen opportunity that can be taken and then replicated to the other sectors of the transport sector.
I think I want to start by bragging about Gibela's supplier development program. And I've said this to the team, that I have been in supplier development for some time, but I've never seen we leave supplier development in Gibela. We don't talk about it, we leave it. We dedicate engineers to come to a supplier premises and sit with them and support them. They've got regular audits. We are very intense because what we are doing is intentional. It's real development, and we want to see growth of those suppliers. Again, I'm repeating myself because it's not necessarily for us, it's for the country. And not only do we focus on the manufacturing practices and the standards, but we take it further to supply chain as well, where we do supply chain audits with them, because once they've mastered one side of it and there's another one that is lacking, we get into that. Pete's team is diverse in terms of what it does. And I think that also enables, in fact, that we are also evolving as a team ourselves, because we've then said, while we are doing supplier development the way that we are doing it, we also want to say, let's start sitting with the suppliers and looking at, instead of getting somebody else outside to do local content, we still use the other people that are doing this local content evaluations for us, but we want to sit with the suppliers and start to innovate where there are constraints in terms of finding components locally. It shouldn't be just a development that only exists because of the specification and the ways of working and the processes of ours, but enable some of the suppliers to come up with solutions. And I have actually found that if you give your supplier breathing space, they are able to give you solutions which you have not thought of. Key to that is a recent supplier engagement forum that took place, I think it was in March, Pete. What happened in there as a result of that session was that we found that some of our generic suppliers were starting to talk to the developing suppliers, because the development can never be done by Gibela on its own. Gibela has partners, so where there are gaps from the developing suppliers, some of the suppliers that are already in the market and are established are starting to say, thank you, you've developed us, but we want to partner and transfer the skills to others. So key to that, I would think that that is one of the things that we need to look at, duplicate, replicate, and inculcate that once I've done it to you, pay it forward as well.
Super. I guess definitely that can be applied, whether it's in aerospace, aerostructures, whether it's in bus manufacturing, whether it's in ship building or boat building.
And I think, Prof, the reason why I'm using this example is because I think previously when one was doing supplier development, it was a paper exercise. You had a contract and you had, you are looking at the skills, you're looking at the jobs that are being done, and perhaps at a high level, you know, you just need to support them to be fluid and to be sustainable, but not to grow. And when you are out, what happens? Because I think we started with the way that it was defined by the codes of good practice. Mm-hmm. But gone are those days where we should be looking at it in that way. And I think what is lacking, however, is the exposure beyond what we do, of what we have done and who we have developed, introducing them to others. And many developing entrepreneurs, they are busy trying to grow their business, that at times they don't have time to go out there and explore what the market has or what else is in the market, because they're developing there. And that's where conversations that we are having here come in, because that is, I think you touched on this introduction, this enabling conversations where we then are able to say, this is what is currently is out there in the market. I think there was a time where, it's not Africa Rail, but one of these rail events that we used to have, it used to take place at Gallagher Estate. When I was at one of the SOCs, we would bring in our incubators and we would put them there so that when the other rail sectors that were there from, doesn't matter the country they were coming from, they would go there, interview them, because the purpose was for them to get excited and see what South Africa is all about, what South Africa is doing. And they may not take the company with them, but they can take the idea with them to say, we need to develop this in our own country and be able to start the process. At some point, we had a female-owned, they were supplying fabrication, and they had fabricated some small cable things, and they were interviewed by an ambassador from Ghana, I think. And he was very interested in learning from them so that he can do the same thing on the other side for other women companies that they were looking at developing. And I think such things, just a little exposure, show that it is happening and it can be done. And when we do that, we spark an idea to somebody that they can implement. And I think the other thing that I was thinking about earlier is that South Africa does not lack innovation. We've got resources in this country. And these resources, they need to be harnessed, and we need to be able to tap into those. It's just that the ideas are there, but the implementation takes long, Roberto.
So I guess IFOW must just accelerate that process. Obviously, it sounds like IFO is an answer to everything, but IFO is looking for these opportunities, and if they are coming from the industry, who better to come from than to hear them from the industry saying that, you know what, the processes are slow, So then it becomes IFOW's problem to say, where are the bottlenecks? What's making it get stuck? How do we unbundle and make the things efficient? Because like you are rightfully saying, whoever is doing business is focusing on improving what they're doing. and some of these other things become, lost in the focus. So if there's somebody who's like, I'm a partner, I'm here, I can come and unbundle this and make sure that it's efficient so that it fits into your system and helps you with your output, then we are going somewhere.
The bravery that you mentioned earlier, sometimes we're brave to grow this, but you're not brave to expand it. The fear of failure is huge in us as individuals.
And then we take it to organizations, and then it becomes organizational culture.
Yeah.
Nazalel, I guess you've been scribbling a lot. It looks like you've got many points for us. Where do you think, based on the improvements that you've seen in what you do, what do you think can be taken to be replicated in the other sectors with respect to the question of localization and supplier development? Obviously, I heard you earlier on, you spoke about this a bit, saying that you're not so resourced to go and help everybody, So
Yeah.
you've got fewer resources, but I still think there are places where you've been watching, and for us, that perspective is very important, because as a player who's constrained, there are things that you see that maybe somebody else who's not constrained doesn't see. And we want those views to come out liberally. So please feel at liberty before I open up to the other SMMEs in the audience so that they can also contribute in this regard. You can go, Nazalel.
Thank you. I will speak to quality.
Yes.
Through working with the rail industry, in a rail sector, the highest quality product is demanded there. The trains are carrying people. They need to be as safe as possible. Nothing should break, because we're talking about lives. So at Delberg Engineering, throughout working with the rail people or partners, we implemented a range of management systems. The ISO 9001, the ISO 45001, 14001, 3834. Those are the certifications. Maybe speaking by numbers, some won't know what I'm talking about. Just let me elaborate more. The ISO 9001 is a quality management system requirements that you implement in the organization, that gets implemented throughout sales down to production. And then you have got your 14001, which is the requirements that you implement into the processes to make sure that your activities doesn't damage the environment. And then you have got your 45001, which previously people know as 18001 OSHAs. So we have implemented that as well to ensure that the people around our operations, they remain safe all the time. So we don't want to produce a product that have made damage and make people unsafe along the process. And also, we have special process certification, 3834, that is for welding. So welding, obviously, some will know that is classified as a special process. So for you to be able to confirm that you are producing a quality weld that won't break in service and cause safe hazards, it needs to be certified. So we have done all those certifications, working with our customers. And some of them, when we implement them, there was some form of government support. So, and then after implementing all this, we have seen that we started also getting some of the work outside of the rail by virtue of having these standards. So I think these can be taken out to other sectors or other form of transport in the transport sector. And also, while you are busy with this, you get to skill your employees, because some of these requirements or certification require that you skill your employees to a certain level. Like in terms of welding, you have to train your welders. You have to get someone internally there and train them as welding coordinator. The second part in localization that we have done was in terms of the material production. There are certain materials that they get specified to us by the customers. Those materials, you find that they are of non-standard grades or specifications that are available in the country. So in that sense, we worked with local steel mill, to develop the tooling to produce these materials. And also we worked very closely with our customer, who came in and fund us in terms of getting that in bulk, because our supplier was not gonna just develop a tool for us to buy in bits and pieces. So we had to look at what would be the demand maybe for the next 12 to 24 months, and then we went and buy that. And that worked very well for us. So I think that if it can be replicated in other areas, it can work for others. Thank you.
Super, fantastic. I saw that Roberto stepped out, but I began to realize that there was big talk there about what the government is doing, and through what the government has done, there is a beautiful story there that now they got access to other places, to get work and from a supplier development perspective, I guess that support that doesn't end with the customer giving you orders, but with the state still coming to participate and capacitate you, strengthen your systems, especially from a quality management system perspective, and ensure that you are able to go out there, sell your services and products in a competitive manner, as was mentioned earlier on, that now they are going outside of the rail sector where they started off from. And that's the ideal with these projects where we are looking at localization and supplier development. But I wanted to open up to some SMMEs maybe who also want to piggyback on what he has said, or corroborate what he has said, or highlight other things that are not necessarily with respect to what Nanjelele has expressed. I see there's a hand this side. If we can get the mic, please. Thank you. As the mic is coming, is there another hand? This here.
I would also, Prof, just like to pick on Remco just to hear from them as well.
Okay. So after yourself say, then we can go to Remco and hear their story and those things that have worked, because we are looking for those stories. And earlier on, those of you who may not know, part of this process is going to be the writing of a paper. So you're sitting with information secretly is not helping the country. Obviously you need to share as far as possible what is not confidential, but it's the stories that we're looking for, that we can follow up on and then prepare those into an article that other people can learn from, and that can help the country at large. So it's not going to end with this conversation. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. There's going to be a part where we'll write a paper, and that paper you will also be able to learn from it. Because obviously the things that you hear today, you may not capture everything. but some may fall by the wayside. But if there's a paper, you can always refer back, and all of us can keep moving forward. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, no, thanks, Prof. You know, manufacturing is tough. You know, I think the longer you are in it, the more you realize why people don't run factories. It's a tough business.
So true.
So that's an SMME there.
Yeah, so we're a medium-sized business. And I mean, you know, I think I'll mention two things. You know, the journey of an entrepreneur, from being an entrepreneur to being a manager and transforming to being an executive is a complex journey. You know, so for instance, for us as SMMEs to be sitting here, that means somebody else at work is working. You know, and not many businesses get to a level where you can unplug and come have coffee and muffins and go back to work and the building is still standing. Now, that personal development in itself, you know, it requires some level of investment, because your counterparts, or rather the supplier, the customers that you want to attract need to find you at some level of sophistication, you know, and if you're unable to meet them at that level, then they close the door on you. And I mean, for instance, if you in the automotive space or in the rail sector, they expect you to have a 6-axis CNC machine, to have a lathe machine and all of those things. But the capital cost of having those things on your floor is not as easy as, you know, making kotas, you know. So by the time you have to interface with a Gibela or an Alstom, you need to be so far down the line in your journey that it's practically impossible for a lot of people to get there. You know, so then you hear stories of government support where a CEDA or a NEF or IDC walks in. If you don't have certain things in place, they also close the door on you. You know, so I think what's going to be important and critical in the supply development space is for blue chip companies to set up institutions like this, where an entrepreneur can walk in here and be, I mean, simple things like management accounts. You know, we take it for granted that when you're applying for work, somebody says, please quickly send me your management accounts. Not many of us have that on hand, that I can, on my phone, email management accounts, because I can't even afford an accountant, you know. If the phone rings at work and I'm not there, nobody's there to pick it up. So it's a complex situation whereby we talk about job creation, we talk about localization, but the standard for a micro business to actually access those opportunities, while you are upskilling me, while you are doing audits, while you are, you know, getting me to that level, I need to keep the lights on. You know, and that's why you find a lot of people exiting the space, because it's far easier to do designs, charge for my consultancy time, and get paid. You know, instead of going to hire a factory, ESCOM generators, and hire all these artisans, be involved in SAIWA, get involved in unions, and have pension funds, it's just too much. You know, and then at a high level, you know, it's made to seem as if it's something that you can wake up tomorrow morning because you've got an engineering degree, you can, you know, start up in the back of your mom's garage type of thing. So I think, you know, blue chip companies need to realize that it's an arduous task for an entrepreneur to get to a level whereby they're able to offer quality standards. You know, Mr. Njalele has a good story to tell. They're already at ISO and all those things. For some of us, we don't even have an Excel sheet that just speaks about a QMS to say, when your sheet metal arrives in your factory, who checks that it's the right one?
And it's part of the minimum
You know,
requirement
because
that we
at an educational level, somebody walking out with an engineering degree, they don't teach them that. Whether it's VETS, whether it's UCT, whether it's TUT, you hire an engineer, they walk in and all they can do is draw on CAD. Some of them not even. You know, with honors degrees and all those things. And then you say to him, well, we have to put up a staircase. Can you at least start? How do you even compile a BOQ for a mere staircase?
It's a mission.
It's a mission. So I think, you know, the collaborative efforts that we need to get to, and these sort of dialogues are going to be important. And I think this Future of Work Institute will play a big role in manufacturing, because it's all good and well talking about technology and digitization, but that software needs to live on something. You know, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a train, whether it's a laptop. And we're not having that conversation. You know, we're having this high-level conversation about coding and software and this and that, but nobody then comes and says, but where must this live at? You know, to the extent that today when somebody talks about a cloud, you don't picture a data center. You know, so yes, we are cloud applicators and this and that, but nobody's saying, well, do we have a data center in Mamelodi, for instance? So I think those are just some of the things that we have to engage in.
Absolutely. A very valid point that you're raising there, and thank you so much for opening up your heart. I saw Matthew was scribbling frantically. Very good points. And when you see this guy writing a lot, it means that your stuff is very valid, because Matthew is transcribing all the conversations that are taking place. Like you said earlier on, we are partners in this crime together. So Remco, we've been waiting for you.
Yes.
The opportunity has arrived.
Yeah. So yes, obviously we've been involved, I think, almost right from the inception of this project, from the whole process renewal project. We obviously had Gibela Alstom spent a huge amount of time with us, supplier development, getting us, I think obviously the base was there for us to start from, but we had to spend a lot of time getting us to that level and the standard that was expected of what we believe we are now internationally, at an international level as far as manufacturing goes. I mean, I'm sure we could probably manufacture rail product for any rail company anywhere around the world now. And it is thanks to that input and that sort of the amount of resources they've put in to get us to that point. And obviously we able now to supply them with the product they need to be able to manufacture the end product, which is required now for basically to make the country work. It's something which the country itself needs. At the same time, obviously, as a business point of view, if you're looking at resources and where we started from, it was a very long sort of evolution process and time needed. I mean, it probably took more than 6 years from where we started getting involved, looking at RFQs and looking at what was possible to do and not possible to do, to actually getting to the point of supplying volume and product in a way that made a sustainable business. And obviously it meant you had to, for that period of time, you had to support yourself, you have to find something else to do. Somehow, as a business, you've got to somehow survive. And I think from that point of view, I think that's where I think South African business is also very good at that. We've all had to learn how to survive in the highs, in the lows, whatever problems comes. I think it's created I think an environment where you don't survive in business in South Africa if you're not really prepared to fight it out. It's not sort of you making bottle caps and you do it for the rest of your life. Not in this country. The volumes are not there. The environment's not there for a business to carry on doing the same thing all the time forever. It's very, very difficult to be in that environment, and not here. At the same time, like I said, obviously the opportunity was there because the government had obviously decided that investment was needed in the rail industry. That reinvestment has obviously taken the time to flow through. Gibela was the right partner to be able to build the project that was needed, and they've obviously flowed through and they've put the resources back into the country and into training people, into training, skilling up businesses to be able to supply them locally a product which is what is being made now. Obviously, so we can look at a lot of other instances in the country where that hasn't been the case. This call it a good story hasn't happened, and that is the unfortunate part of it, is that it hasn't happened often enough. When we're looking at employees, skilling people, bringing people, obviously, as a result of this, we do employ more people. But I think the employment, we might look at it a bit differently. Obviously, we need trained people to come into the business, but the very vast majority of who we have working with us have almost been trained within the business. Purely because it's a lot of the times very specialized, but it's very particular to our type of industry. So to try and get, for example, a welder from the Welding Institute, to be quite honest, we would almost prefer to have a welder that's never been trained and train him ourselves. Purely because a lot of what what they've been taught and how they've been taught is not exactly what the industry needs. It's not what we need. We would rather take somebody who we see an opportunity, has the right sort of attitude to what he needs to do and how he needs to do it, and we would skill that person up rather. And that in our business is generally the better way of doing it. I mean, we do bring in learners into the business. We probably retain maybe not more than about 20 or 25% of those learners, because it's not the skill sometimes, it's just the attitude to the job. It's the attitude to being able to, that's as much as in business we got to know what we want and go get it. The person also needs to know that's what I want to do. And we find a lot of the times we don't really get enough of the guys that really want to sort of get involved in the business and really sort of participate in a sense that they're just there for a job. You can't just be there for a job. You've got to try and do more. So I think from our side as an SME, like I said, we are very grateful for what's come through. And again, it would be quite something if we could see it happening more often. We've also been involved in some renewable projects. We did a wind farm up in the Western Cape. And again, yes, the wind turbines, everything was imported. I mean, all that really was made locally, which was made by us, was a kiosk sitting at the bottom of the wind tower. But everything around it, from the tower to the equipment, everything was imported. We were literally the only local supplier doing anything on that project. And that was a fairly decent sized project. It was about 44, 46 towers. So, and again, it's unfortunately what we do tend to see. And you need to say that it probably was from the very beginning that the project was conceptualized. It wasn't done in a way which was thought out, how do we benefit the local industry as much as possible? It was a case of trying to buy it as cheap as possible, or trying to do this, or trying to, it wasn't, I think the eventual benefit to what should have been locally was never thought of when this thing was originally conceptualized.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Please, you can remove the mask.
Thank you.
Hear you.
I just want to get into what the CEO mentioned about skills when she went overseas and saw things done like in a Japan factory. They were actually working on a car. So I want to, for Lucchini, which is the subsidiary that I am a subsidiary of, which is the Italian company. It started in 2015, localized in South Africa 2015, to manufacture railway wheels. And I'm proud to say that Lucchini South Africa, the wheels that are on Gautrain are 99.9% our wheels that are manufactured in South Africa. The best thing that they have done, the Italians, was to take, as he has just said, learners, people that have good attitude, and that take them from school, out from school. They were not employed, all of them. Taken to Italy. They had to acquire skills. 2-3 months, they were trained on the plant, international plant. They saw what was done, and they could do it here. I am proud to say Lucchini today is South Africa is in the world standard of manufacturing wheels because of taking a skill that was not an unemployed people that were not employed, not doing anything, took them and put them in the actual environment. And then now they are flying and they are doing wonders. Another thing I wanted to say, also to support what you were saying, being supported by an international company has really helped us, especially me as Ayeni, because we think ahead. Like for Gibela, we are part of Gibela. We have not supplied Gibela, but Gibela knows that we need a 40 million machinery. We don't wait for government to give us funding. Italian partners, they said, we'll put this machine because we know it will happen. We're going to bring wells because we know it will happen. We've got things that are ready for Gibela. When Gibela says start, we'll say when. You understand? So we have, this is what maybe government will need to do, but decision making from an international company and a private company, it's faster. And it's not about risk and we have to think what if, what that. It is going to happen. Whenever it happens, results will come. So I would like to say I'm wearing two hats. As Lukini on the side, I'm a market development manager for the sub-Saharan Africa. So I know what is happening in the sub-Saharan. We are supplying from here, from South Africa, up to Liberia, Cameroon, Ghana, on the west side, Tanzania. We are supplying wheels from South Africa. So we know the know-how. So what I would like to say from people that are here, I would like to invite them to come to the plant in Germiston. Like what Colette was saying, we like to think like this. Yes, the plant has got robots, but still there are people. It's not as if because the robots, they are there. They are working on the plant, they are there in the plant, but still there are people. It's not like it's taking away. So the job creation. I would like to invite anyone who's interested to come to our plant and see. And with the train that you mentioned, the Durban train, the fast moving train, Lucchini in Italy supplies 80 to 90% of the wheels that the Chinese, they run on. My company that I'm working for. So it's things that we have here. We can do it.
So you're going to make the wheels for the Durban?
We have no choice. We have no choice. We are already there.
Like that.
We are already there in China.
Yeah, so fantastic. And I mean, where I'm coming from is not to cut you, but it's to say, I think these are the narratives that we want to replicate.
Yeah.
And this is why I said earlier on, if we cocoon these narratives, all of us lose. But when we hear these narratives, somebody hears that narrative, a young person here who's planning on their entrepreneurship journey hears that narrative, that they learn something that they won't be taught anywhere else, and we will take you on the visit, but also at the same time, maybe we must have like a center here where we prepare these young people to be ready to come, and they don't have to go to Italy,
Go there. Those people that were trained in Italy, that are being also trained, they're training others. Now.
You want to corroborate the story?
No, why should we have a Chinese train when we've got a stainless steel train that's produced locally? They've just got to put 4 more cylinders on it, can run as fast as a Chinese train. And it's produced locally. Why make more investment? I mean, these are the discussions and the arguments we need to have. Why do we need another train system?
Yeah.
We've got a fantastic train system.
The very same train on this picture, it's manufactured in South Africa.
We're talking about China North Rail.
In totality.
1064. I mean, what are we opening ourselves up for again, guys?
And I guess you heard Roberto earlier on saying that it needs to be an open discussion, the uncomfortable questions. We need to ask those uncomfortable questions. And this is why we have, our leaders like our CEOs here, so that when they sit there and they talk to the minister, they can say, Minister, hey, you need to talk to your other minister there. We don't understand why we need another Chinese train when we've got another Kibela train. Why are we not taking that and replicating it? And sometimes when decision makers sit and make decisions, they're like this. And they don't see what other people are seeing from other angles. But through these dialogues, I guess the eyes are open.
I heard it was Gama again.
Okay, let's not go there for now, but...
Prof?
Is there another hand? Oh, yes.
I saw the mic given to me, so
oh,
I thought...
yes. Thank you for the stories there, Remco and Pukini.
I think there's just one element that we explored, talking of bravery in the supply development space. Normally, you go and to the premises of a supplier and you develop a supplier. We thought of doing something totally different. where we actually bring in the supplier to our plant, we induct them, and we let them work along with our own people, which then means there's challenges because all of a sudden you're thinking, we've got unions, they may not be happy. We've got our own employees, they may start challenging us. But nonetheless, you went ahead, you bring in the people in, they start working with your own team. After 3 months, you said, now you've learned, go and do the parts in your own premises. And it worked.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, additions, interventions? David, you want to speak?
Well,
yes, the mic can come to you.
It's just comment more on that what came from Max Steel already and what you mentioned. And there was a strong international partner sort of backing the operation, you know, to that point that you're ready when they say you're ready. And that brings me to what Roberto was saying, where should perhaps the role of the policymakers of the government be in this case, you know, just to be there, to provide the support that the international entity brings to the country, and can only bring into the country when it makes sense economically, when the economy of scale is there for it to happen. You know, so on one hand, localization is great to support the local environment, and on the other hand, it is an obstacle for a company like Lucchini, for instance, to come here if it doesn't make sense money-wise. So it's just the chicken and egg situation. Again, no solution sort of is there, but I would just like to acknowledge that based on what you said.
Thank you, David. Are there any other comments? Anyone who feels left out? Okay. So this makes my life very straightforward, because I want to give the opportunity to Mr. Tsidiso to do closing remarks. But before I do that, I want to give the panelists one more shot, you know, a minute each or 2 minutes each, just to give us their parting shots for the conversations today. What is it for you, do you think is the big take home? Obviously, Tsidiso is going to summarize, etc., you know, but what is it for you personally as you have participated today, heard the audience speaking, heard the questions coming through? What is it that is the take home? You know, when you get back to the Delbeck CEO, Mr. Nanzelele, and then Colette, when you, you know, give feedback to Hector. You know, what is that, you know, you as my executive, you had the whole day at Titsila. What are you doing there? There needs to be a story. It can't just be, you know. And of course, you know, CEO, when you go to the board, or the next time you have a chat with the minister or the DG, you know, I was part of this. And so what is that you're going to, because, and I'm asking them because they're sitting in the front, but you also need to ask yourself, what is it that am I going to take to the key stakeholders that have an interest in what is taking place here? Am I going to go there and propose and say, you know what, we need to go and support a big data manufacturing center, you know, at the Institute of the Future of Work? Yes, because this is what it's about. It's not about the scones and the food later on. It's about that thing that you're going to take home and say to the guys in Italy, you know, Italians, are the professors who are also working with you here? Maybe I can connect you with the other professors there at the university at TUT. That's what it's about. This is what the conversation's about. So if we miss that part, then everything is lost. But if that works, you know, even if one thing creates the next Elon Musk, you know, as they always say that, you know, the next Elon Musk must come from the iPhone. So this is why we are having these conversations, because through these conversations we are hoping that a young person is going to sit there and be inspired, and something will happen. And we'll look back and, yeah, we're there when it started off at the dialogue. So Nanzelele, the take home.
Thank you. As I've said when I started, I'm happy that our customers are here. Even the suppliers are here. I can see two already. Opportunities are there to grow. That's what I've seen. I have seen that the rail is very much alive, and new projects are on the pipeline coming. So we'll just continue to grow as well ourselves. So that's what I'm going to take back to our CEO.
Thank you very much. Yes, it doesn't look like rail is going anywhere. Rail is here to stay, definitely. So Delbek better be ready. Thank you. Colette?
Yeah, I think from my side, the take home, I think, for all of us is that let's rethink how we cut the red tape, number one, in terms of enabling each other to participate and to cooperate with each other. Let's document some of the lessons that we are learning so that the future, in fact, as we are talking about the paper, that's where that point came from. Because some of the things that we are doing, someone must learn from them and innovate them or improve on some of these things that we are doing. There are some of the basic principles that we had before that we seem to have dropped. When the gentleman was talking about management accounts and I remember that at some point we used to have enterprise development hubs where we would have someone who can assist an entrepreneur with SARS and tax clearances, explain what an ISO 9000 is, what all of those other aspects that sometimes when as an entrepreneur who would be successful would need to understand so that you can take them and start building from your business and sometimes leverage on that support. We need to go back there and bringing those things. At Gibela, we've got a cedar, it's in Springs, so it does offer those types of services. But also we must remember that as we develop entrepreneurs, they don't have time to sit in classrooms because we take them and we put them in classrooms. When are they going to go and run their businesses? So we need to find a way of simplifying the development, but making sure that there's an impact within the industry. Let's also try and support them not to die. So that's very important because when you're developing someone, I can't start you off with a huge order and expecting you to do it very quickly. I must start you gradually up, but I must make sure that as an OEM, there's somewhere where I support you that you actually don't die in my hands. I think we have seen some, even within Gibela, that are going through serious challenges post-COVID. I think somewhat that's where, in a way, the role of government comes in as well to say, go revisit, because some of them were initially supported by government. So government as well cannot just fund and leave. Fund and monitor and evaluate and support. We can't do it on our own as private sector.
Thank you very much. I think Hector's ears are going to be wide open there. You must give more business to these companies that they've supported. Yeah. Absolutely, I agree. Don't you agree, Mr. Nanzelele?
I very much agree.
Yeah. You must take the message back that the message is going to the CEO that more business. So this is the good thing about these conversations, because it's here, you're a bit relaxed and people say stuff, but later on it continues to haunt you. That thing that I said. CEO, yes, I've deliberately made sure that you laugh last.
I'm actually listening to your comment and thinking the next thing that the CEO will be expected to do is to go and get the money somewhere. But listening to everyone around the room, I do believe that challenges that are there are wrapped up as opportunities for us to really innovate and learn hard lessons. I do know that the future of work is not the only institution that can do that which we believe it can do. There are other institutions that might be, one way or the other, even duplicating in small pockets, not knowing that they could be part of a bigger plan. If I reflect and go back and say to the board, we are contributing and we want to participate in the future of work at the Institute of the Future of Work at TUT. How do I convince them that that's the best decision too? And having listened to everyone here, it is clear that it is the best thing to do. It's not all gloom and doom. Obviously, there are real tough situations, especially for entrepreneurs. And as he was speaking hard, I actually realized we need to go and improve our SMME development policy in order, even though we might not give you capital, but to a large extent, that buffer that allows for the tasks that take you away from running a profitable business, if we can find partners that can collaborate in that regard. So yes, lessons even for our institution back home, but indeed, thank you for inviting me to take off my gloves and not think about skills development, sit around the table with manufacturers while I'm from skills development, but indeed fresh thinking and insights that will improve the economic recovery strategy of government from institution point of view. I'll invite other sitters to come along if the opportunity exists, so that they can be in the next dialogue session. But most importantly, from my seat, I'll invite the research and knowledge manager to always be up to speed with what insights and developments in the space are about.
Absolutely. You know, in my culture, they say when the adults have spoken, you must sit down. So at this juncture, I'm going to hand over to Tate Mohlomi to respond and give closing remarks and gratitude.
Good afternoon. When I was being interviewed, one of the things I said, the reason I had applied for the job was that I believe that this is probably the last gig in employment, but I also believe that it's an interesting space to be. And I think today's dialogue has affirmed that because we have in the room, the white monopoly capital. I mean, those that have money. We have SMMEs, and then we also have the scholars, and we also then have the international partners. And I do believe that today's session went really well, and it has actually surpassed my own expectations. And Prof. Mpofu, when he was talking to me earlier this morning, he's like, we need to have takeaway, the take away home stuff. And what I would have actually taken away is that there is an appetite for what the Institute stands for. And let me briefly talk about the Institute. But first, let me thank the panelists. And I was talking to the CEO, saying that she's like, no, the people in the office wanted to condition her. And I said, I'm glad that she was not conditioned. So she spoke without filters. And it basically means that what she said is from the heart. And Colette, Gibela, I think it's one of those boys that managed to chat to a girl who to others was not looking so good. And the girl is starting to glow. And therefore, thank you so much. Gibela has a research chair, and also Tita has a research chair. So if you are in here and you don't have a research chair here, you should ask yourself why. I think what you have done, you have straddled the line between the real small enterprises and the medium ones. And the language that you have spoken, it's basically have addressed the issues around the challenges that are there, but also the opportunities. And I think the gist of this discussion has also then created the fertile ground for collaboration with everyone in the room. And the reason I am saying that is the issue around localization is complex, especially within the space that you are in, where you are supposed to use the steel. And then the question of balancing the local content and what to import, it's very critical. And I was having a discussion with somebody this morning saying that our approach to localization should not be reactionary. Our approach should actually anticipate some of the challenges. And in order for us to anticipate those challenges, we have the academias here, Mr. Prof. Mpofu and others, that need to start telling us how the future is going to look like, so that when future happens, we are not surprised and we are not caught off guard and we are not blaming government. And the purpose of the institute is basically to create a gateway between academia and the industry. And the reason for that is that in the past and even in the current state, the graduates that are being produced, they are the problematic ones, the ones that you can't take because they can't learn. And through the institute, we are saying we want to position Tshwane University of Technology as one of the first universities in the country to be able to create and produce future-ready graduates. And the only way we can do that is through partnership with the industry. We need to be able to know what you want. We need to be able to also look into the future with you to say the kind of graduates that we're going to produce are going to take us to that future. So that is the first part about the institution. And how is that going to pan out? One, the dialogues. We have to talk. And so this is from the EU perspective to be funding this the dialogues that we have been having within this space. And I think EU basically sees an opportunity. And from the perspective of business and then also perspective of gathering knowledge and sharing knowledge. And so this is only the smaller dialogues. In October, we are going to have a big dialogue that is going to be looking into the future of work and then also looking into the impact of innovation. Now, that is the first part about the institute. The second part around the institute, we are then saying innovation in South Africa for some reason have been happening in a vacuum. I come from government. I used to work for Gauteng provincial government. And sometimes you get an SMME that would come with a solution that want funding because it's a solution. And the question that you would then ask is that, have you done your market research? Is there a market for such solution that you have created? And in most of the cases, you realize that it was not there. And the other problem that we've been having, Prof. Mpofu, in South Africa is what we call duplicate innovation. We duplicate innovation, somebody sees something being used in the US, and then they think that they can recreate that in South Africa for it to work. I do believe that our problems are unique, and we need to produce solutions that are unique to our problems. And as the center, or as the institute, we are then saying we are creating an environment for collaboration between the academia and the industry to produce, one, practical research, and two, innovation that is relevant. And so next time, probably when you come, I think that the chair of the council is very ambitious. He was saying in October, this should look the part, the institute, the center, the building. And the reason he was saying that it should look the part is that we are not only going to be incubating, but we're going to be then saying to Gibela, you have your research chair. And it's not only about the papers that are being tuned out, but it's also about the products that are being, people are thinking through and also innovating. And, Alstom, we are also saying the same to you. Everyone who is in here, we are saying this is going to be the space of co-creation, collaboration for the best future. So if we would not have a space in this building, there should be a problem with you. And then you'll be the enemy of progress. Lastly, let me say that, CEO, I'm glad you said that you're going to bring other cities. And then also there are some partners, that are benefiting from the skills, whatever you call those things. They need to actually find place here. They need to find space here as well. And so with this word said, we are faced, in the coming months, we are faced with two mammoth tasks. One is the university is very intentional because we want to strategically position ourselves as a #1 research institution in the country, in the continent, competing globally. And in order to do that, we have purchased this space. The council have agreed. And so the process to buy it is in motion. And the concept around this, those that are in innovation space, is that it's coined around the Sensor City in London. That is a co-working space and all other stuff. And so the first challenge is we need to make it look the purpose. We can't talk innovation when we are still affected by load shedding. So load shedding should not be affecting us too. The cosmetic look of the building will also change to reflect our intent. And then so what we, Prof and I are doing as well is to go out and say to the guys, the university has purchases, they put the money there, and then they have committed the running, the running cost for the next 5 years. And then we are then saying to the industry, let's make it look the part. Gibela, we'll talk. But also, I know that the CEO will say, but in my budget, there's no money for such. But we can still find money somewhere. With these words, Prof. Mpofu, thank you so much for a well-orchestrated dialogue. And it does not end here. The report is going to be written that will be sent to you. I would actually encourage that we continue with this. There's going to be a third dialogue that's going to happen, but I would want us to institutionalize this dialogue around the localization and supply development in the rail sector. The reason I am saying that is, one, we have the free, the agreement that we have, the continental agreement that we are having. South Africa should actually be seen as a stepping stone into the African market. I do believe that the TUT and the Institute should play actually a leading role in making sure that it happens. And secondly, there is a talk around the Tshwane Gqeberha rail link, whereby the legislation has been changed to allow the third-party access, where Transnet will allow third-party access on the rail. And that is a huge opportunity. And so let's not let it go to waste. Let's leverage on it. I don't want in the next 5 years we will come crying and say the Chinese are taking over our rail industry or somebody else is taking that. So as the university, we are saying we have the expertise, we have the will, and we have partnerships. Let's make things happen. Thank you.
Normally Roberto would have spoken, but Roberto is gone. So I'm not sure whether you were given 1 or 2 words by Roberto to, give to the audience. This, yes. So, please, I'll give you the opportunity. Yes. There is also a mic on the table.
Thanks very much, colleagues. Also to Prof for pulling it all together again. I think, well, let me introduce myself. Darren. I'm from the EU delegation based here in Pretoria. And as you know, we've been partnering with Prof and the Institute to hold these dialogues. Of course, from the EU perspective, we see the clear benefit in speaking about these issues. The EU and EU business is fully committed to South Africa, the economic development of the country, and the transformation, as you can see in the little logo over there, EU Investment for Transformation. Excuse me. So the EU industry, obviously, this is one of the key topics that has been raised with us, is the linkage between academia and the industry and the skills aspect that links them both. So this is kind of the basis for us partnering with TUT and the Institute for the Future of Work to take these discussions forward. And as mentioned, there will be one more dialogue. I'm sure you'll all receive invitations to join us in that. And yeah, so again, I think from my side, it's just to say thank you to everyone. And we look forward to continuing the collaboration with the Institute and with colleagues and stakeholders that are in attendance today. And we would like to take up also the offer to come and visit some of your facilities to see what is happening on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Darren. You're always on point and to the point, especially when you stand between people in lunch, So from my side, if you would like to take a tour in the research center, you're welcome to come along with me. But I know some of you have already toured it before, so I'll just quickly give a tour of what's taking place there, and then the rest of us, we can go for lunch, and we call it a day. So we try and also keep it very precise and to the point, so that people still have an appetite. It's always good to come to the party, and when it's getting nice, you close it, because next time people will still want to come back and start off where they left off from, rather than coming and making it another parliamentarian session. It goes on and on, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, it's still on. We don't do things that way here. The way we've timed them, we try and keep them to that, and we keep your appetites wet. So, on the other hand, don't hesitate to come back to us. Reach out to us, contact us. We are here. Come through. On a day when everyone is not in a hurry, and say, please take me around. So those who are going for the lunch, you go out through this door, and then those who are going with me will go out through this door. Then we'll take at most 10 minutes. It's not going to be a long one. To the guys online, we haven't forgotten about you. Thank you so much for your participation. I see you've survived the online session, but please, next time, come along physically here. We'll make sure that there's much space. You can see there are so many chairs still available, so we also make sure that we keep to the regulations of the time. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you.